So guys, it's really nice to be here, nice to meet you. Who was at the Careers Festival yesterday? Okay, who came to the MYB stand or saw us there? Okay, so there's a couple of you, great. Okay, so thank you for coming yesterday, and I'm hoping by the end of the session that you're going to end up with a lot more information about what we do at MYB from a software perspective, and why I believe this is one of the most compelling graduate programs around. So the introduction around my background, at heart I'm a software developer, and even though I probably sitting more in the management and coordination space at MYB right now, I still love to code, and that's kind of what I do either during the day or on weekends or whenever I get a spare moment. So that's kind of my passion. Now with a group this size, what I like about this size audience is actually possible to not just have a rote presentation, but really get to the questions you want to have. What I like about this is we have a mix of people. There seems to be a computer science or computer related thread going through, but there are also some other majors and diversity in what you're studying. And I think that's really important. If there's something I learned when I was going through formal education was I thought it was all about the computer. Writing software is not all about the computer. It's also got a really strong people element. It's also got a strong problem solving and systems thinking element. And then there's also this element of business and understanding how business works. So just by way of introduction around MYB, for those of you that haven't heard of MYB, we do accounting and business management systems. And MYB has been around for quite a while. If you think of most businesses, MYB has been around for almost 30 years. And through those 30 years, we've gone through various technology evolutions. So if you speak to accountants that have worked in the accounting space, they would have been familiar with MYB products for a number of decades. And one of the challenges with being around so long is you have all these products out there. If we look at the space today, there's a big move through to cloud computing and online systems. But 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't like that. It was all about desktop applications. And at MYB, we have both. One of the challenges you face with desktop applications is you can't update them easily. So it's really hard to keep them up to date. And that's one of the big pros that online systems give you. It's really easy to release updates. So you'll come across people that are still using products that we wrote over a decade ago, which is great, but it also presents a challenge because often they compare what we wrote 10 years ago to what we're doing today. And that's vastly different. So it's almost an unfair comparison. Now, MYB is always about innovating. If there's one thing I've learned since I've been at MYB is we're not perfect, but whenever we see something that's working, we adapt and we innovate to adopt that really, really quickly. So I've been at MYB for 2 years. I joined in July 2 years ago. And if I look at the organization I joined versus what we're doing today, it has rapidly changed as we found better ways of doing things. And we've been recognized for that innovation over the years, the various awards that we've won. I'm going to speak about our Future Makers Academy, and we're going to speak about it really briefly. It's not going to be a long presentation, then we're going to come to questions, and that's where I really want to get to the things that you want to find answers about. But just some terminology that we use in the Future Makers Academy. So really the Future Makers Academy internally is what you would call a graduate program at any other organization, but it's a little more than just a graduate program. We don't just look at university graduates, we look at a full spectrum of people to create software, because we truly believe that that diversity gives us a competitive edge when we're trying to solve problems. The other thing is there are two main components to the academy. There is currently what we call an acceleration phase and then a crew rotations phase. And I'll dig into that a little bit deeper later on. We also speak about proteges in the academy. So we don't use the term graduate. And the reason we don't use the term graduate is we believe that a really strong foundation to growing great software talent is through mentorship. And the term protege really resonated closely with mentorship. So if you go and you look up the definition of a protege, it's really a person that is led or grown by an older, more experienced person. We're not so worried about the age, we're more worried about the experience. So when you join the Future Makers Academy as a protege, you are given mentors that work very closely with you to grow and help you through your career and your path. We found that it's been a really effective way. Now, don't confuse the term protege with prodigy. Prodigy is somebody who has exceptional qualities. While most of our proteges are exceptional, it's different words. And we found sometimes people get those confused. Now, what I really like about MYB is most companies will talk about values and vision, but you don't really see a lot of that down at the grassroots level. At MYB, it's a really flat structure. So we recognize that the more layers of management we have, the harder it is to make a decision, the harder it is to adapt. And we believe that the people closest to solving the problem are often the people best equipped to come up with solutions. So we want to empower them to make those decisions with as little red tape as possible. And to do that, we focus really strongly on values. So at MYB, there are a couple values that we believe in strongly. It's clients. So clients are the essence of why we're there. If we didn't have clients, we wouldn't be there. Then there's collaborate, simplify, innovate, results, and passion. So those are our values as an organization. Who wants to hazard a guess what the number one value for us is at MYB out of those? Any takers? Yes. Yes, clients is our absolute number one value. Our second value. Sorry? Innovate. Okay, that's one option. Yeah. Results. Okay. Any other takers? Collaboration. Okay, great. So 3 answers. I've got three little bits and pieces to bribe you for participating. So there you go. Who was the other 2? I'm just going to ask if you can pass those down to the 2 that answered. So it was a bit of a trick question. All our other values are of equal importance. So at some time, collaboration may be a stronger driver than innovation. At other times, innovation may be a stronger driver. It depends on the problem we're solving. And so at MYB, we say clients are number one value. It's probably going to be there always. And these other values are of equal importance, and it's up to us to make a judgment call and trade-offs. And in many ways, that's what software engineering is all about. It's about making trade-offs. To write the perfect code is really hard unless you've got infinite time. So you've always got to make these trade-offs around cost, how much money you have, and what you can really achieve. So in MYB, in our teams or crews that we call them, we really push this mindset of values, because if people understand the values, they can make the decisions, and they don't need a manager there to kind of approve it or get in the way many other times. So just in terms of location, we are Australian and New Zealand based. So we have offices in Christchurch and Auckland, Melbourne, Sydney. From a development perspective, we've got 3 main development hubs. So we have a development hub in Auckland where we've got about just over 120 software engineers. In Melbourne, where is our main development hub, we've got a couple hundred. And in Sydney, we've got a development hub. It's about the same, slightly smaller than our Auckland development hub. Those are our 3 main development hubs. And if you're going to be applying for the Future Makers Academy, you can actually, provided you're legally allowed to work in those areas, you can apply for any one of these areas. So you can apply for Melbourne or Sydney if you're interested in that. One of the things you'll find, has anybody been to our offices before or to our premises? Okay, so I really encourage you. We have these things we call hack days, and we do that 2 or 3 times a year. And what we do in hack days is the whole of engineering stops what they're working, and for 2 days we just find an interesting problem. It can be whatever you want, and we form new teams and we try and figure it out. So the last hack day, the project that I got involved in was, we actually, is it in this picture? No, it isn't. So we have a nice big table tennis table, but one of the problems is everybody forgets the score. So we tried to figure out how we could automate monitoring the score digitally while somebody was playing, and we spent 2 days trying to build that. It was lots of fun. Never actually ever ended up working, but was a ton of fun to do. And what we do in those hack days is we open it up to students to come and join us, and they join us and sit and pair with us, write some code, build something, and then participate in the prize giving. So keep an eye out for when our hack days are happening. Sign up to our newsletter, you'll get notified, and you can come join us. You'll come have a look at our office. But you'll see that it's a place where we're trying to support creativity. So there's a lot of work put into creating an environment that is supportive of doing creative and sustainable work. If you do a bit of research around MYB from an engineering perspective, you're going to see pretty good feedback on sites around Glassdoor and LinkedIn. I'm not so interested in those kind of responses. I'm more interested in the kind of the culture in the academy. So the Future Makers Academy is not just about preparing you as a software developer and teaching you how to code. It's more than that. We look at primarily culture, trying to bring different cultures together and create a place where we can understand each other. So one of the things I really enjoy is in the academy, when you join as a protege, there is a lot of support around just having activities. We're a strong believer in having a meal together and kind of the conversations that happen around that. So the proteges organize these different activities throughout the year. This was an example. Everybody did a dish from their own family meal. We just brought it all together, and it was just this amazing amount of food and different flavors. You'll see that part of what we believe in is learning. Like, we're essentially paying people to learn. So for us, more than appropriate is, it's not about just sitting in front of your computer. If you want to read up on something, that is part of your work. We're paying you to do that. So the protege experience is all about having a guided learning experience where we can fast track you in some areas, but give you a really, really solid foundation on the things that we value and how to upskill in them. Let's move through. Now, in this picture, there's a lot going on. Basically, what I just did is I went through my phone and just picked out pictures of events that we were doing. So the first thing you'll see up here is this picture in the top, your top left. The person standing up front there is Hugh. Hugh is our VP of engineering. And Hugh takes it really personally around focusing on our proteges and investing time in them. So in this example, he booked out an entire morning where he basically walked the proteges through the business and strategically, like, what were the problems we were facing from an engineering perspective? Like, what was his take on what challenges we'd be facing, how we should be approaching things. So he gets quite involved with the protege program. The other important one is John. So this is a picture of our Melbourne area. One of the challenges we had in Melbourne was we were going through an office revamp. So we opened up, I think it was an extra 150 seats. So there was a big revamp. So we were running out of desk space. So we had, people were fairly cramped up at the time. But the important thing here is the person sitting here is John Eves. John Eves is our lead architect. He's got over 30 years experience building software all over the world. And he comes and he regularly pairs with proteges on what they're working on. And for him, it's really important. He says, this is how we create the next generation. So if you join the program and you come in, you will get to meet John and get to meet his passion. And a lot of our senior technical people get quite hands-on in the protege experience because they believe this is the way that we make our industry better. The other things, it's just us having fun. One of our proteges didn't have any, at the time he came from an accounting background, so he was an accountant that got into software. And so he did a brown bag session at MYB around our last financials and just explained like how we could read it from an engineering perspective. So it's just about getting these different views and different people involved in the program. So what can you expect through the Future Makers Academy? It's designed so that it allows you to move at a pace appropriate for yourself. So what we mean by that is there are certain things that we value from an engineering perspective as an organization, and we understand that you may or may not have had exposure to that through studying or previous experiences. And so we want you to be able to work through the academy at a pace that you're comfortable at. So if there's an area where you're already strong at, you can just fly through it. If there's an area where you want to invest a little more time, we're going to give you that time and capacity to do that. You can expect to spend anywhere between about 7 months to 24 months in the academy before you become an associate developer. And that time is really spread between acceleration and this concept of crew rotations. And let me just walk you through what that looks like. So this is kind of the journey of a graduate or a protege through the academy. And the first thing you'll see is from day one, they are introduced to their mentors, and their mentors really guide them through this learning experience. So during acceleration, the focus is on just upskilling in your area. So we give you a set of problems that increase in complexity to stress certain areas. So who of you have heard of or practiced test-driven development? Does anybody know about test-driven development? Okay. So TDDs are a really important practice for us, but it's something typically that academic institutions don't teach because it's not really an academic topic. It's more of a hands-on something that you'd use in your professional career. So we want to kind of bridge the gap around that. So you'll invest quite a bit of time getting on top of test-driven development, being introduced to how it works, how to make things testable from a code perspective, but it's not just about writing tests. It's teaching you how to design things that are loosely coupled and easy to separate and pull out. And that's a really powerful design concept. So TDD is one of the things you'll learn through acceleration. There's lots of pair programming. We also do a thing called mob programming, which we go through as well. There's an introduction to continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Who's familiar with continuous delivery or continuous deployment? Okay. So these are all things that are really important as a professional developer in the industry that we want to give you experience really early on so that you can kind of fly through it through the rest of your software career. At the end of acceleration, there is a movement into crew rotations. And the way crew rotations works is we've got about 50 odd engineering teams spread across MYB. Some of them do front-end development, some of them do back-end development, some of them do a mix. They're solving different problems, and we want to give you an experience where you can kind of find your niche, to find the area where you get the most fulfillment from. So crew rotations, you look for crews that want to take you on, and you can map out a journey, spend 3 to 6 months with a crew, and you can do that multiple times. So by the end of the academy, you've not only upskilled in kind of the core skills that we find necessary for professional development, you've also had an opportunity to work in different areas of the business, find out different tech domains, different technology, and also find out different ways of doing things. So that's the real opportunity around crew rotations. And then at the end of the journey, you will become an associate developer. So what is the difference between a protege and an associate developer? An associate developer is permanently embedded in a single crew or single team. And they will stay in that team for anywhere a year upwards. So any questions around this journey? Does this make sense? Is that explained? Anything you'd like to know about it? This is where you get to ask whatever you want. Good question. Okay, so do we focus on a particular programming language? We don't, and the reason we don't focus on Well, let me rephrase it. We do focus on a particular language, but we don't place it above any of the other languages. One of the things we found as an organization is languages and technologies change really rapidly. And so where we want to focus our energy is at the principles under that language. So there are a couple paradigms. There is an object-oriented statically typed paradigm. There is an object-oriented dynamic paradigm. There's also a functional paradigm. We start off in an object-oriented statically typed paradigm because we believe that's a really safe place to start off with, but that's not where we want you to stop. One of the things that we really value is this concept of being a polyglot programmer, which means that you should be able to move into a language and understand and get ramp up in it really, really quickly, and we want you to develop that area. In the academy, however, you would typically start on the acceleration material in either Java or C#, because those are both object-oriented, statically typed languages, and they give you a good foundation in that. Other questions? Yes?
How to test for candidates?
Good question. So how are we filtering for people coming into the academy? So let's see. Let me take you through our interview process. One of the things we're moving away from is just like, so a lot of graduate programs, the way they do it is you just have like this bulk interview, you get everybody in a room, you get them to do a couple things, and then you pick, okay, I'll take you, and then you have your graduates. We're a little different from that. We believe that it's all about filtering and finding the right match. So the first thing is you've got to sign up to our mailing list, and we notify you on that mailing list when positions open. And the first thing we'll ask you when you apply for a position is to submit your CV. And we just do a really, really high-level CV scan. What we're looking for in that CV is we're looking for what differentiates you from any of the other students that we get through. We see hundreds and hundreds of CVs. So we're looking at, are you doing something other than just attending university lectures? What makes you stand out? Some of the things that I look out for personally, and these could change, but I'm going to give you these tips now. Do you attend user groups or some sort of community events? Do you have a GitHub repo that you've done commits to at a regular cadence? Do you blog? Do you... We'll look at Stack Overflow, any sort of engagement at that level. What we're looking for is we're just looking for somebody that's demonstrating a bit of passion and a bit more than it just being a job. So if you make it through the CV scan, there will be a phone screening, which will just be a short conversation with somebody just trying to get a better idea of you. And then first and most important is the cultural interview. The cultural interview is really important because we believe a cultural fit is probably better than a technology fit and a bad cultural fit. So we want people that we can work with and that we believe can work with us first and foremost. Teaching the technology is actually really, really easy. After the cultural interview, if you make it past that, we have what we call a systems thinking interview. It's something you just cannot prepare for. It is to look at how you look at a problem and how you approach solving a problem end to end. So there's no coding involved in it. It's just discussion in a whiteboard. You don't write code. Anybody can do it. It's not a requirement just to have a CS degree to do that. Then you'll notice I have a collaboration assessment. We haven't quite figured out what we're doing in there. We've experimented with different ideas just to see how you work in a group and how things go. And then the last step is a coding challenge. And what we're looking for in the coding challenge is we're not particularly concerned with whether you get the right solution. We're looking at how you approach the coding problem and just to gauge technically where you're at to see how much effort is it going to be for the mentors to get you from where you're at to where we want you to be. So that's the assessment process. Out of the it was close to 200 applications we received this year. We award 4 positions in Auckland, and we're sitting at about 11 positions in Melbourne. So it's quite a rigorous interviewing process to get down to the small number, and then you'll be brought into the program as a protege. Did that answer your question around how we assess it? Yeah. The coding challenge you can do in any language. We encourage you to do it in C# and Java just because it's easy for us to do the reviews. And you'll find with the coding challenge, will probably be a couple backwards and forwards. So we do a code review. We do quite an extensive code review. We give you feedback. We give you opportunities to adjust through it.
With regards to those two languages you mentioned, Mark,
Yep.
if a student has experience in those, is there much of an advantage? Or
No, there isn't much of an advantage because often we have to unteach. So often people that have already learnt those languages often get bad habits, and so sometimes it's harder teaching somebody that has bad habits to somebody that just has a blank sheet. So I don't want you to go out and say, I've got to learn Java or I've got to learn C#. What you've got to focus on is the principles behind those languages. If you get those right, you're really good. I'll give you a couple tips of where I would invest some time. Who here has read Clean Code, the book? Okay, go and buy yourself a copy of Clean Code. It will help you to write really, really clean software. Growing object-oriented software through tests is another one. It's a good resource. And then the last one I would suggest is 4 Rules of Simple Design by Corey Haines. Those are all 3 really good books that don't focus at a language, they focus at kind of the principles behind the language. Just to give you an idea of our intakes, we have 4 main intakes through the year. We have a February intake, then we have a May and June alternate intake, and then an August intake. And these we adjust each year, and we'll notify you through our mailing list for the intakes. Okay.
so why I asked that question as well on the coding is because that's yesterday a lot of students were coming up and asking what languages these guys were coding, but as you said, it's not a particular language as such, which is
Yeah. Yeah, so for instance, the last submission we had on the coding challenge, they did it in Python. Even though we don't do a lot of Python, we have people that have professional Python backgrounds, and we did a review in Python, which was fine. And we'll do it in Ruby and whatever else, JavaScript, whatever works. Because you're going to get to work with all of those at some point in your career. So where do you go from here? Signup.futuremakers.io is the place that you want to go. That'll get you onto the mailing list for when registrations open up. And you just keep an eye on that. If at some point in time you get a job somewhere else or you change your career path, you just unsubscribe to that newsletter and then you'll stop getting notifications. We try not to spam people, so we let you know when there are invites to the hackathons, when there are invites for applications, and that's about it. And with that, that's the end of the formal presentation. Are there any general questions, anything you want to know? How are we doing on time? We've got about...
You know, so those hackathons you talk about, are they just as good for year 1, level 1
Yep.
students as year 3 students?
Yep.
yeah. So we opened sort of last year. We started inviting a few students along, and when I've done that, like I'm not in the development team, so I don't know if the student who's coming along is necessarily a great coder or whatever it may be. But what we're really looking for is students that's probably more of the soft skills that will become willing to come into an office and be a part of the team and run with it. And again, don't necessarily have to be, let's say the top of their class in computer science, software engineering. So a great example that we had. So last time we did this, the first time I had a couple of secondary school kids come along, and one of them, a 17-year-old girl, actually foreign exchange student, was just brilliant in the sense that I don't think she was the most technical, but when it came to presentations and things like that, was comfortable getting on the mic and presenting to 100, 150 people, obviously all older than her, but just getting stuck in and work. So you're effectively an NYB employee for 2 days, right? So what we expect from everyone else is taking part in what we expect from you to have Saidish, the cat and the cat jumper. He's involved in the NYB IT Challenge. Last year he won the Auckland Regional, and this year he's actually running the case. Behind him, Jordan, she's been to our office 3 years in a row while she was studying. So a lot of these guys have had connections with us. And whether it's us or anyone else, and said what Mark already mentioned about coming to hack days or coming to an office visit, whoever you want to work for, how can you connect with them further, get a better idea, to work out whether you actually want to work for us. An intern from AUT who joined us last summer, still works for us part-time. After meeting with us, she emailed probably 3 or 4 or messaged 3 or 4 people, what's the culture like, to want to find out. Because obviously you guys will want options, how do you decide, and the more you get to know, you get a lot easier.
Yeah. We're starting to have more internships which run over the summer, and that's a great way to get to know people. And I'm really pro of internships happening first and second year, because that gives us an opportunity to introduce you to the things that we value. So by the time you get to third or the end of your degree, you've already had a couple years of exposure. So these aren't just exclusive to final year students that are going into the workforce. Any other questions?
What are the typical timings for this? Like, we can continue with our studies and this thing, or?
So this is full-term. This is full-time employment. So if you're going to do studies, it would need to be part-time and after hours, and that is a challenge to pull off. Some people do it, but.
Are there any other options also, like any paid sort of things you offer, just to teach?
Say it again.
Any other options for the full-time students here, if they want to learn these things?
Yep. So we actually are having a code retreat at AUT in the next month. I think it's the 18th of August. And coming to a code retreat is a good opportunity to get exposed to some of the practices. The code retreat will look at an introduction to TDD and some pairing. So that's one thing. We're trying to use the mailing list as the way that we communicate those opportunities out. We're still trying to figure out what are the best ways of engaging and where do people get the most value. So we're going to be trying different things in that space. But we don't have like a formal come to this event each time. We're just not at that stage right now. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah.
I just only wonder, do we have any option or opportunities to?
Yep. So there are opportunities around internships and part-time work. There are a couple of things that are important to MYB. So our internships are paid internships. We will not take somebody for free, and it's just a principle behind it that if you're going to come and dedicate some time, we need to pay for it. And so it's just trying to get into one of those. We did have an internship this last year where the intern ended up working 1 or 2 days a week because they had a lower set of studies that they felt they could commit to that. It really depends, but trying to get to that point, you'd first need to have established a relationship with us. So it would be unlikely that we would just offer that to anybody. We'd first need to know who you were and maybe seen or interacted with you at a hack day or some event. Okay, so I've held you hostage here long enough. If there aren't any other questions, then thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time, and have a good rest of your day.